Namaste everyone, my name is Pragna.
My name is Nehal.
And it's our pleasure to welcome you to PDX Champs. So my name is Pragna Wanyoni. I'm an undergraduate student at Oregon State University, majoring in microbiology with a pre-med option and a minor in chemistry. A little bit about me, I'm pursuing undergraduate research at the Dallas lab at OSU, working with bioactive peptides in human milk. I spend most of my time volunteering with Hindu Swam Sevak Sangh, Seva International, and other community organizations, and I love working with others. Some other of my hobbies are painting, dancing, and traveling with my family.
Hi everyone, I'm Nehal. I'm currently an undergraduate student entering my third year at the University of Washington, where I am pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Molecular, Developmental, and Cellular Biology and hoping to minor in Applied Mathematics. A little bit about me, I am an undergraduate researcher in the UW Pathology Department, where we investigate the molecular mechanisms of aging. It's very cool. I am a Bharatanatyam dancer, and I'm very passionate about a new form of Indian dance that I have been a part of at UW. And I also enjoy exploring Oregon and hiking around with my family.
It is our pleasure to welcome you to this event.
We have a few words for the audience to take care of.
The views expressed in this webinar are purely based on personal experience gained by the participants in the specific area of their expertise. Neither Sangeeta, Sanje, or any of its participating experts are advocating these practices.
We strongly recommend the public to consult their family physician for any specific needs and requirements before trying out any of these practices. We will start off the evening with an invocation by Ishan. After that, we will learn a little bit about the pandemic and what exactly coronavirus is and how it's different. Following that, we will get to learn more about coronavirus through the real-life experiences of Dr. Kavan and Dr. Kishan, our frontline healthcare workers of the day. We will also get to hear from Anirudhji about how yoga can build immunity in times like these and amidst the pandemic. Following that, we will hear from a COVID survivor, Maheshwari. After that, we will learn from how we can benefit the community from a volunteer, Sudha. Finishing the first part off, we will hear a great musical melody from Asimji and Preetiji.
We will continue our event with the second part of Dr. Kavan and Dr. Kishan's talk about their experience treating COVID patients. We will then have the second part of Anirudhji's yoga talk and hear another story from a COVID survivor, Santosh. We'll also hear from brave volunteer Lokeshji, followed by a musical medley by Sharadaji and Padmini. Be sure to stick around and stay tuned for our Q&A and an interesting video at the end.
There are some suggested donations, some places where you can make your monetary contributions. If you want to invest in the PDX COVID community services, you can visit the Seva International link. If you would like to help with India-based COVID community services in Bangalore, you can visit the Abhyudaya link. If you would like to help with providing meals to frontline healthcare workers, please contact Ashwaryaji for any of those and to be organized.
We'll have our invocation.
Hello, my name is Ishan.
My name is Satu.
Agajanana Padmakam, Gajanana Mahadnisham, Anekadanta Bhaktanam, Ekadanta Upasmane.
Vakratanda Mahakaya, Surjakota Samaprabha, Nirvignam Kurumadeva, Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada.
Thank you.
On that note, let's begin.
So we are going to be introducing our PDX champs. Our PDX champs are basically Portland's local heroes or champions who have been working with the COVID-19 causes. In this webinar, we are going to be featuring the following great personalities. We will be talking about and featuring the frontline warriors. These are doctors or physicians who have been working with COVID-19 patients. We will also talk to a yoga practitioner who is helping us to combat COVID by building body immunity through yoga. We will also be talking to successful warriors, those who battled COVID-19 and are here to share their story. We will also be talking to Braveheart warriors, which are basically our volunteers who stepped out of their homes to serve the community when it was advised not to go outside. And then we will also be featuring our musical motivators. These are musicians who have been organizing community events to keep the community entertained and motivated.
Now, a little bit about the pandemic and COVID-19 itself. So what is a pandemic? A pandemic is basically a disease that has affected around the world. Viruses that have caused past pandemics typically originated from animal influenza viruses. So we can see HIV and AIDS that has killed over 25 to 35 million people around the world. And we also have SARS, which has affected and killed 770 people, which is a precursor to the COVID-19 pandemic. A little bit about coronavirus itself. The coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is an airborne virus which is transmitted by droplets released into the air. So if an affected person coughs, sneezes, or even talks and releases droplets into the air, which is inhaled by someone else, that's how the virus is transmitted, which is why it is really important to keep that mask on to contain those droplets. However, the virus can't travel more than a few feet and will fall to the ground, which is what makes that 6 feet social distancing rule so important. A few statistics. As of August 29th, the virus has killed over 182,000 people in the US and has affected more than 800,000 people around the world.
So some of you might be wondering, what makes COVID-19 different? Why are people so scared of it? How is it spreading so fast? Well, for one, you might have seen this image of the coronavirus with all the red spikes on it. It's a very popular image. However, what those red spikes are basically spike proteins, and these are what allow the virus to go and infect the host. Now, all viruses have these spike proteins, but what makes coronavirus different is that it is able to interact with a human protein called furin. And furin is found in high concentration all over the lungs. You can see it pointing to those purple structures, and it's basically able to bind to those spike proteins on the coronavirus. Because the spike protein allows for interaction with furin, coronavirus is able to bind more tightly and more frequently, increasing the spread of coronavirus. Additionally, incubation time is another factor. Incubation time is essentially the time it takes from infection of host to when you actually start to show symptoms. So for the flu, it's around 1 to 4 days, but for coronavirus, it can be up to 2 weeks. You could be walking around spreading coronavirus for 2 weeks and not even knowing. And we also know coronavirus can also often appear as symptomless as well. So with these two factors, and a little bit here and there, COVID-19 has spread dramatically and caused this global pandemic. And now we are going to be joined by our frontline warriors for part 1 of their talk. Dr. Coven is a specialist in the pulmonary and critical care of patients. He did his MBBS in Bangor Medical College and studied in his residency in internal medicine in New York. He also did his fellowship in pulmonary and critical care medicine in New York as well. A little bit about Dr. Coven is that he enjoys playing chess and table tennis. He also enjoys biking and kayaking with his family. Our second PDX champ is Dr. Kishan. Dr. Kishan is also a pulmonary and critical care physician and has been a pulmonary associate since 2011, just like Dr. Coven. He did his MBBS in Bangor Medical College and his residency in internal medicine in New York as well. He also did his fellowship in critical care medicine in New York. Some of his hobbies are biking and playing badminton. Thank you for coming to our event, Dr. Kishan and Dr. Coven. The stage is yours.
Hello. Yeah, hi. I am Kavan. I'm a pulmonary critical care physician. I work at Salem. I work at Salem Hospital. I've been working for the past 9 years in Salem. Before that, I was in New York. We wanted to share our experiences and also give some more information to those who are interested. Can we go to the slides? Yeah. Coronavirus is not something new. The virus is called coronavirus because of the crown shaped around it. This is not the first coronavirus. We do see a lot of coronavirus in the community in the form of human coronaviruses that I have mentioned here. This is the 7th coronavirus. The 4 coronaviruses that cause common cold are still seen. The HCOV, that means human coronavirus, all those numbers are to differentiate one from the other. And also they say where they originated. SARS was the first time, it was in 2002, and it hardly caused any deaths, probably around 700 deaths compared to the coronavirus that we are seeing now. There was a Middle Eastern coronavirus from Saudi Arabia in 2012. Even that didn't cause so much death. This was different. This is causing a lot more damage than what we initially thought. A little bit more about how the virus spreads and how big they are. Next slide. This is a comparison to look at how big the virus is. To the left-hand side is the human hair, and that's like a cross-section of human hair. And compared to that, virus is just a dot. So virus is extremely tiny, and it can pass through many things with ease. Next slide. So main thing we wanted to talk about is transmission. There is a lot of mixed messages from very well-known organizations. So we wanted to clear it a bit. Main mode of transmission is still what we call droplet. That is when we cough or sneeze or even talk, there's a clump of viruses that come out, and these do not travel for long. The 6 feet distance is arbitrary, but still most of them do settle down within 6 to 8 feet. Very rarely, the transmission is also airborne, especially in the healthcare setting, where the virus stays in the air for a longer time. And there's a lot of importance given to contaminated surfaces, what we call fomites in the medical world. This can be anything like doorknobs, faucet handles, the table surfaces, any inanimate thing is called a fomite. The transmission by fomite is not common. It's actually very rare that we see it's due to fomite. Most common is still the droplet. This is a slide to show how far it goes when someone sneezes or someone coughs and when someone talks. As you can see, when someone sneezes, the virus can go up to 6 meters. When someone coughs, up to 2 to 3 meters. And then when they talk, it's a little bit less. Next slide. This shows the effect of masks on virus transmission. Without mask, obviously it spreads more. And it goes into how different types of masks reduce the transmission. For example, the surgical mask reduces it a little bit. N95 respirator does a better job. And the elastometric respirators, I'll go into that, but that does an even better job. These masks, it's well known that they do reduce the transmission from one person to the other. Prevention, main thing we would like to focus is on the mask, because since February, this is what we are doing, using masks, hand sanitizers, and social distancing. Masks, there are different type of masks. Let's go to just me, yes. Okay, this is an N95 mask. It has to fit exactly. And it goes over the nose bridge. And then this has to be fit tested. And it's also very hard to breathe. This does give very good protection, but this fits very tightly. It's hard to breathe, and it has to be fit tested. We do not suggest this to general public because one thing is they are not fit tested for these, and we are still having a shortage. As you can see, this is actually a recycled one. There's a number to it too. We are using hydrogen peroxide to recycle these masks, but these give very good protection. Even there is a recent study saying that they filter out 99%, even though it says N95, they do filter out 99% of the COVID viruses when they are fitted properly. The next common thing that is available, which gives more protection, is the KN95 mask. Now, N95 and KN95 are the names given by the regulatory organizations. So this is from United States. We have a National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. This is certified by them, and these are tested by them. KN95 is Chinese, and their regulation. Now, if the main problem with the KN95 is they don't fit properly. So if they fit properly, fit in the sense it has to form a very tight seal. It becomes a little bit hard to breathe, but it has to form a tight seal. When they fit properly in a hospital setting, they do filter out 85% of the viruses. So they do give very good protection when used properly. Next, most common are the surgical masks. So these are available at most places now. These go over a loop. Just make sure that you press on your nose so that it fits a little bit tightly over the face. And these are the same surgical mask. The difference here is you tie it instead of just. So when you tie it, it gives a better seal. So the difference is amazing though, because when you tie it, it gives almost a 70% protection. When you just use a loop without a tight fit, it gives about 30% protection. So there's a difference. So mainly it depends on how tight the seal is. These are paper masks. They do give the same protection as surgical masks as long as they fit properly. This is one more type of mask. This is similar to N95. It's like it is a N95. It is a duckbill Again, this has to be fitted. Same property as the N95 mask. Now these are face shields. They go around the head like this. Now they do give some protection, but don't use face shields alone. They don't give enough protection to prevent the virus. They do give protection only when you use it with a mask. So always use this with a mask. The reason is one of the ways the virus can enter is through your eyes. So these do give additional protection. There are some more. This one is, again, it gives more protection to the wearer. Almost it filters out 99%. It's very difficult to wear. We sometimes use it in the healthcare setting. And finally, these are for eye protection. Now these are used in addition to the mask. We don't think that's the main way of transmission. Most of our patients who got the disease, they know exactly where they were exposed to. Most were in family meetings or family barbecue or some kind of a family gathering. Prolonged exposure is more important. If you're walking on a trail or walking your dog, something like that doesn't give you the same exposure as talking to a person who is infected with COVID-19 for prolonged period in the sense up to 15 minutes. Can we go back to the slides? Oh, going back one screen. Oh, this is what we wear in the intensive care setting. The reason is we do aerosolize the virus. Aerosolize in the sense we do things that makes the virus float in the air for a longer time. The risk is very high. So in addition to this, we wear a gown over this. But the mask with this is something called PAPR mask does give us almost a 99% protection. We have been using this since February, and none of the doctors or the nurses have been infected in the hospital because of this. So it's a very good protection. What we suggest to public is use the surgical mask as opposed to the cloth masks. The cloth masks are not consistently made in the same way. That's one problem. The other problem is they can get moist and chances of infection goes up to very high levels. Cloth masks are very good to prevent infecting someone else. For the wearer, it doesn't offer much protection, but it does prevent some spread to others. So that way, cloth masks are good. But what we suggest to public is these surgical masks. These are widely available now. I know CDC still says don't use surgical masks, but we say use the surgical mask. This is the one that protects you. Let's go to the next screen. This looks at what activities are low risk, what are medium risk, and what are high risk. So in general, anything where there are a lot of people and it's indoors, it's a high risk. So public transport, air travel, large gatherings, watching sports in a stadium, or going to places of worship, bars, things like that. Next, coming to medium risk, going to gym, hair salon, working in an office without social distancing, and also indoor restaurant. Now, outdoor restaurant is a little bit less risky. Most dentist places are using a lot of precaution now, so it's like low to medium risk right now. Going to grocery store is low risk as long as you keep moving and getting your groceries. Again, spreading through the grocery bag or groceries is low. And staying at home is the safest. Other than that, walking your dog, walking take out food, biking, walking, hiking, all those are low risk activities. Next slide. Risk factors for severe disease. I know this has been talked over and over again everywhere. What we have seen is almost all our patients were obese. Obesity somehow reduces your immunity. And other diseases, not necessarily in order, but heart disease, diabetes, old age, chronic lung conditions, and cancer also increase the risk for severe disease. Now, we put in old age because, yes, older you are, you can get a severe disease. But the youngest patient we have seen is a 22-year-old. And if you are listening to the news, a 29-year-old, 37-year-old, people as young as that have died. So just because you're young doesn't mean that you're immune to it. And just because you're young doesn't mean that it will be mild. It can be severe no matter how young you are. Next slide. So someone mentioned this. Most of our patients that we saw, it's usually 5 days from exposure to first onset of symptoms. But almost 98 to 99% of them present within 12 days. Very rarely it can go over that, but most of them do present early. In the ICU, it's a little bit different because we work in an intensive care unit. Mostly people come when they're very, very sick. They need ventilation. So usually they come to our ICU on day 7. I know this study says it's mostly day 7 of hospital admission, but in our experience, by day 7 or day 8, they end up in the ICU. So you know the timeline. So if you're exposed to someone, 12 to 14 days is still a good number of days to isolate yourself. Next slide. Now, I'm sure different people have different experiences with these symptoms, but most of our patients, fever and dry cough and shortness of breath, the first 3 symptoms were the most common. Fever is not usually very high, 102, 101, 102, somewhere in that range. And they have a cough, which is dry. They don't bring up any phlegm. And the shortness of breath is very extreme. They can't walk even a few steps. People who run marathon struggle to walk from their bed to bathroom. So there is something called, we call it as silent hypoxemia in these patients, meaning their oxygen levels can be extremely low, but while they're sitting, they don't feel anything. Normally, if the oxygen goes down, your body reacts and you'll be really short of breath. Like body says, hey, take a deep breath, take a deep breath. So they are working at it. But in this, for some reason, we are yet to find out why, but for some reason, oxygen will be down to normal. Oxygen should be above 95, like 97% or so. But anything above 90 is still good. But in this, patients can be as low as 80 or even 70s, and they hardly show any distress. Other common symptoms are fatigue, muscle pain, or myalgia is what we call. Some people do come in with nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. No, lack of smell is well advertised in the media, saying this is the most commonest, but not in our patient population. What we have seen, we rarely see anyone saying, "Oh, I lost my sense of smell." I think other symptoms are more pronounced, and lack of smell is not very prominent. These are the commonest symptoms that we see. Okay. So these are how we are seeing our patients in Salem. I'm sure throughout the US, people have different experiences. But these symptoms, these are everywhere in every journal, but this based on what we have seen, we have made a list of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Coven, for. Okay. I think it's unmuted. It's unmuted, I think. Okay. Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Coven, for all that informative talk about whether it's the type of masks or other protective equipment. I found it really interesting that, oxygen levels remain normal while sitting. So that was very interesting. I'm pretty sure our audience and I definitely appreciate all you had to say about it. Now, next we will be moving on to our yoga talk, and basically Anirudh, our speaker, will be talking about how we can use yoga to build our immunity during these times with the practice of intermittent fasting. Anirudh is a yoga practitioner at Chiang Mai Mission Portland and has been teaching yoga since October 2017. He is also a software architect at Intel and received his PhD in computer science from Penn State University. A little bit about him is that he loves studying scriptures, and he's an avid runner. He ran the Hood to Coast for the last 5 years, and he's a technology enthusiast. Welcome, Anirudh. Thank you for being here. You can take over.
Hariom. Thank you, everyone. So I decided to split my talk in two parts. There's another talk coming up, but the first part is diet. And why is it related to yoga? Because what I'm going to talk about, even though it's a fairly modern concept, but it has been around in our tradition for thousands of years. I was asked to basically talk on anything that can help improve our immunity. So while our honored doctors have given a lot of details on how to prevent this, why wearing the mask the right way, and so many other details on how to prevent. So of course, those are precautions, but what else can you do? What if you're sitting at home? Can you still do something? And I believe we can. One of the things that all of us can do is pay a little extra attention to our diets. In general, anytime you're eating more raw foods, they're going to be better for your immune system. These are, again, kind of well-established facts. But the part that I want to focus on over the next 5-7 minutes is a concept called intermittent fasting. It's basically, let me define what an intermittent fasting is. It's basically a fasting done periodically where you extend the amount of time that you're not consuming any food from your regular. Let's say most people anyways fast at least approximately 10 to 12 hours, where, if they're done with their dinner at 7, then they don't have their next meal before 6 or 7 in the morning. But intermittent fasting basically just pushes that window from 10 to 12 hours to 16 to 23 hours, depending on how much you're willing to give. 23-hour would be your more extreme intermittent fasting, where every day you're basically not having anything but plain water for 23 hours, and then you have all your required nutrition in that 1 hour period. You can make it very extreme by 23 and a half and 30 minutes, because it'll take you at least 30 minutes to eat food that will replenish you for the entire day's work. And then, of course, you just don't do it once a week. You do it at least 5 days a week. Ideally, you do it forever. And what this has shown is intermittent fasting has shown that it will replenish your white blood cells. It'll actually increase the number of healthy white blood cells. While you're fasting, you will deplete your unhealthy or your older white blood cells. And then when you actually eat, that process replenishes them, and it therefore boosts your immune system. I have personally been practiced this for about 5 years, and I noticed that it is very, very effective. I mean, my experience was I used to have this common cough and cold once a year, twice a year, regular stuff. that would put me down for maybe a few days in a year. And with this intermittent fasting, as long as I was regular, I would barely get any cough, cold, or even minor things. And I was fairly active going to work. It's not that I'm, not interacting with people. I was, and I barely, even if cough and cold was coming, I could kind of feel it that, okay, I am kind of getting it, and then it goes away in the same day without even completely taking, you know, taking hold of me. And this was something initially I thought, okay, it's anecdotal, right? It's just me. But then I noticed a vast majority of people who did intermittent fasting like I did. And of course, I did a more extreme version, 23 hours, no food, and 1 hour raw vegan diet on top of that. So there are two aspects. One is, of course, fasting. The second is the more raw content you put in your food, you will notice that it is healthier for your immune system. It keeps you overall healthy. Greens and other raw, like fruits and other things, will actually provide an extra boost to your immune system. And if you're Indian, like most of us, you can add your right spices, turmeric, and all sorts of spices to actually add on to the immune system. So even when I would make my smoothie, I would actually add turmeric. I would add, a few other spices. I would add a lot of herbs, mint, things to actually help me, not just the fruits and the nuts. So I would put a lot of fruits, even broccoli, spinach, greens, power greens, which you can find in a lot of stores. And that was my main meal. So it is something that a lot of people who practice this have experienced. Now, what I'm going to try and advocate is not a very extreme thing, because 23 hours, not many people's lifestyles will allow that. But what you can do, which is quite effective also, which some research is showing, is instead of having your meal right in the morning, you push it until 1 p.m. So your first meal of the day starts at 1 p.m. and then your last meal is, let's say, 7 p.m. And you consume, in intermittent fasting, the interesting thing is you're not trying to reduce your calories. So let's say you do have 2,000 calories in a regular day. In intermittent fasting, you just compress that same consumption over 6 hours. Now, what you'll naturally notice is when you compress it in 6 hours, you may not eat as much. And I would almost bet that you will not eat the same amount that you did, even though that is not the goal. You're not trying to cut it down, but you will naturally notice that you're eating maybe 70, 80, or 90% of what you used to eat, even though you're not trying to watch calories. Because that's just a lot of food we eat is extra. And if you are increasing weight even at a slow rate, you're eating extra food or you're having less activity. So that is, it's a very, very ancient technique. Our ancient yogis would basically be a lot more extreme. They would eat food only then when they were hungry, often once a day or once in 2 days or once in 3 days. But of course, their lifestyles were very, meditative and not as active as it is today. But however, in times of COVID, we are actually not very active at all. Most of us are sitting at home, or our activity is just probably cooking or moving around in the house, maybe short walks if we take it, or cooking or anything around that. It's nowhere as active as if you would actually go to a workplace, and in that process of getting there, you'd have to park your car, work a lot, interact with your colleagues. So we are actually having a lot more sedentary lifestyle. So we need to actually perk it up. And it calls for eating a little bit less. And on the other hand, while we are sitting at home, we tend to eat more. So it is something that we should all pay a little bit attention to. You can find a lot of interesting research that is going on in intermittent fasting. Just search intermittent fasting, immune system, diet effects. You'll find some anecdotal, but still a lot of studies that have been done more recently in the last 5-10 years that show that it is definitely a good thing. To what extent it is good is still debatable, because unlike modern medicine and other things, these kinds of research don't get enough funds. That's what I feel. But my experience and a lot of my close friends and others who have adopted this diet, they say that it's a clear winner. It's like a no-brainer. Once you get into the mud, the most difficult thing is 1 week. The first week is very difficult because your body is trying to adapt to not eating in the morning, maybe not having your tea or coffee in the morning. Because strictly speaking, when you're doing intermittent fasting, you can't have teas or coffees. It has to be only plain water in the time that you're fasting, because you don't want to trigger your digestive system at all. Some teas may not, but it's best, like I would just be safe. I would never have anything other than plain water. You could have warm water, which is actually even better if that's what you want to have. And if you make it 16 hours, it's really not that difficult, 16 to 18 hours. 18 hours is what I would shoot for. Most people can do it. That basically means that you only have your food between 1 and 7 p.m. every day. And the rest of the 18 hours, you just subsist on, water. You do not cut down your activity. So when you're doing intermittent fasting, unlike your Indian once a week fasting, where people are mostly sitting at home, no. If you used to walk or run, like I would routinely run 5 miles a day, even when I'm fasting 23 hours, and the body just adapts, and you don't even know. It's not like after running I'm more hungry. Actually, I feel great. So it is something I would really encourage all of you to do. Have more greens, raw food in general, fruits and greens, and then try and expand the number of hours that you're fasting. So instead of breaking your fast at 7 a.m. in the morning with our traditional breakfast, maybe break your fast at 1 p.m. And give it a try at least for a week if you want to see some effects, because most of my friends who have tried it at my behest, or sometimes because of some underlying conditions or something they're trying to deal with, within a week, they actually do notice a positive difference. So you just have to give it a try 7 days. And after that, just rely on your experience. If you think you're having a positive experience, then you will be self-motivated to continue this. If not, you might want to cut it short or experiment with variations of it. YouTube is a great source where you can find lots of people talking about intermittent fasting, where the people relating their experience in a lot more detail than I can in this 10 minutes. But it's definitely something, it's not fully backed by science at this point, but whatever initial evidence is backed by science, which means it's not one of those activities that the doctors will say, oh, you should not be doing that. At least when I give you the 18-hour version, right? You will not find, there's a lot of controversial, health, diets out there, but this is not as controversial from that perspective, because I'm not asking you to necessarily eat a different kind of food. The first thing you can do is maintain your same diet, just compress it over 6 hours. Then the second step you could do is add more raw foods. So you can do it very slowly over time. This is a great immune booster over a long-term period. If you practice it over weeks and months, you will notice a difference. You will notice that if you're not having clear skin will start to clear up. Lots of other things that I notice that a lot of people notice when they follow a diet like this, and it will not reduce your energy at all. Like when I went it from my traditional 3 meal a day or 4 meals a day diet to this, I actually did not cut down my activity at all. And I actually noticed that my energy levels were even better than before. My lethargy was down, significantly. I would rarely ever yawn or feel sleepy, and I would only sleep 6 hours a day. Although I'm not asking any of you to do that, because the general recommendation is 8 hours and you should stick to that. So yeah, thank you very much. That's all I had to say on this part. The next part I'll be talking about, pranayam, to boost the immune system. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Anirudh, for educating us about how intermittent fasting can lead to that boosted immunity. I've heard of intermittent fasting for diets and ways to lose weight. So this is the first time I'm hearing it for, boosting immunity. I think it's amazing that you haven't fallen sick in over 4 years. So thank you again for sharing that with all of us.
Thank you.
Before we go on to our COVID warriors, I would like to remind everyone that on the YouTube stream, you can enter your questions for either the physicians, Anirudh, or any of the volunteers or the COVID survivors that we will be featuring shortly. There is also a link at the bottom of the slide. Is that showing? Sorry. Yes, so there's a link at the bottom of the slide that can also take you to a form where you can put in a question or a comment, but the YouTube live stream is also available. So now we will be moving on to one of our COVID warriors. So our first PDX champ successful warrior is Maheshwari. Maheshwari is an IT service manager, and some of the major symptoms that she faced were body ache, high fever, loss of taste and smell, and also loss of appetite. Some of the preventative steps that she took were drinking lots of fluids, homemade medicinal drinks, tender coconut, energy drinks. She also practiced staying calm and strong. The number of days that she battled COVID and the trauma was for 14 days. A little bit about Maheshwari is that she enjoys cooking. She's an avid foodie. She enjoys dancing, hiking, and walking. She also loves spending time with her family and her friends, and she loves trying out new restaurants. Thank you for being with us today, Maheshwari. The stage is all yours.
Hi everyone, this is Mahi. I will not give my introduction as you have already seen my introduction. I work as, I am an IT professional. I will directly go into my trauma, what I went through. It all started normal on March 27th, Friday morning. I woke up normal, nothing, no symptoms, and I was fine, completely fine with, no fever, uh, no ache, anything like that. And I was working from home, and the symptoms started around 11 a.m. Friday morning, that is March 27th. So it started with a mild body ache. I would like it's not particular, but definitely like lower body ache was, I could feel that. It was little intense as well. So, and then like it started with body ache, and I was still working because I didn't know. I thought like maybe my since I started working from home from March 11th, so I thought like I might have a just regular pain without like office setup, sitting on the bed and working. So I thought that could be the problem. But around 3:30 p.m., it started to get intense. I started to get a chillness, um, kind of like, I was losing interest to work because the pain was a little bit more than it was when it started at 11 a.m. So I just logged out so that I can like rest a little bit, and I thought like I would be fine. But I logged out at 3:30 and I just took a nap. But when I woke up, it was much worse. Again, I didn't had any fever. It was just like again body ache and chillness, and the pain or the muscle ache or the body ache continued Saturday as well. I Saturday had a little bit fever. That's when I thought like maybe I should just stay away from my family and maybe self isolate. And also at the time, the COVID test was not available. It was like very, minimum capacity, I would say. So on Sunday morning, I called. I did a virtual appointment, and like they said, like until I have like all the symptoms, they wouldn't suggest or like they wouldn't prescribe the COVID test. So on Sunday, and it still continued. And by evening again, like I couldn't take the pain, so I had another virtual appointment, and they said like maybe I should go to the nearest urgent care or like nearest like emergency and have it checked. But again, like they didn't say that I have to get a COVID test done, but like just a regular checkup. So when I went there, they did a one nostril swab and a chest X-ray. So the doctor told that they don't see any locks or cluster in my chest after the chest X-ray, and it is influenza B. That is what they diagnosed it as. So I was kind of like relieved, but still at that time, and I still self isolating. So I stayed away from my family, and I was kind of relieved when they said when they diagnosed it as influenza B. So I came back home, and Monday I was fine, completely fine. That is the March 30, if I'm not wrong. So no fever, no body ache. So I was completely fine. But then from Tuesday, it started back, like the body ache, the chillness, everything started again. And it continued again, like what I had another virtual appointment, but again, they said like until I have the major symptoms of COVID, they wouldn't prescribe me COVID test. So Thursday is when I had like pretty much all the symptoms except the shortness of breath. Um, and then like they're like, okay, it's better to go have it tested. So I went and to the nearest urgent care and got it tested. And all I was hoping it was it's negative. That was the only that was running through my mind. But unfortunately, it came out as positive. So then, like, at the time, March, especially March, April was peak season. So all that was going through my mind was like, since I have a 6-year-old, like, I don't know, like at that point, I didn't know that I was going to make it or not. So all I told my husband in the car was like, please do take care of my daughter if anything happens to me. Because all I was saying is like the death rate was really, really high at that time. So that was the first thing I told him. And he said like, no, you will going to be fine. Stay calm, stay strong. Those two words were really, really helpful for me. So like I stayed calm. I came back home, and at this time, before I used to see my family from very far away, but this is when I got to know that I'm positive. So I tried to stay completely away from me. So it was just in my master bedroom, and I didn't go out of the room for 14 days. The symptoms again, like after I got to know that I was tested positive, the fever started like spiking up only on certain time. It was not throughout the day. Throughout the day I would have the fever, but it wasn't like 103, 104. So the fever would only spike around 12 p.m. to 12 p.m. around like 3. It would last anywhere between 2 to 3 hours. And again, in the evening, it would start around 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. These were the peak time that I would get like, I would get pretty high fever. And this would be around day maybe 6 or 7. By day 8 or 9, I completely lost taste and smell. I didn't notice that in the morning when I woke up, but then I was like, at some point, something like maybe I realized that something is off. And then like, I was like, I couldn't smell, I couldn't taste anything. So all I did is like, I literally went to my closet and tried pretty much all the perfumes and zero smell. That was the strange and weirdest feeling that I had ever had. And definitely I lost appetite. Maybe it's because of, or due to it's because of, a loss of smell and taste. I couldn't eat anything. I didn't wanted to eat anything. So this continued for around 3 to 4 days. And after I started to gain a little bit of taste. My reactivated my taste buds basically. So I was feeling a little bit okay. So, and I started to eat. And then by day 12 or so, I started to feel a little bit better, but not completely. And by day 14, I was completely okay, fever free for 3 days. And I had already regained my taste and smell. But the pain is definitely there. Staying away from family member was one of the hardest thing that I had ever done, especially after having my daughter. I had never stayed away from her for even a single night. Staying away from her for 14 days and not seeing her, that was the more than like pain, or going through COVID. The hardest part was staying away from family, definitely. To give a little bit of where I could have gotten from was, I started working from home from March 11th. I wasn't going out anywhere, but I had a massage appointment. So I had been to massage, OHSU had an appointment, and Costco. These were the only places that I went. Again, I don't know where I got it from. Uh, at that time, the mask wasn't mandatory, so I wasn't wearing a mask. I might have gotten out of any of these places. And precaution, or like not precaution, like the um, staying strong is definitely one of the best thing I think I have done. Staying calm and staying strong, because what I have heard, or like maybe I like learned, was staying strong is one of the uh, best things that we can do. Is when we are weak, our immune system get also weakens, or like get compromised. That is what I have heard from many of my friends, doctor friends. So that's why I try to stay strong. Um, Taking a lot of fluids, a tender coconut, and homemade medicinal drinks, hot medicinal drinks, taking steam every 2 to 3 hours, and sanitizing as much as possible. That is, I tried avoiding hand sanitizer, and I did most of like hand washing, because I was still in the bedroom. So I thought like, washing hands quite often. That is what I did for all 14 days. And as I said, medicinal drinks, homemade medicinal drinks, hot water, steam, and good healthy food. Uh, this is it.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. First of all, I think we and everyone watching is so glad to see that you are healthy and okay again. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been to have been away from your young child and your husband. And I really admire your strength and perseverance through it all. So thank you again for feeling comfortable enough to share. Next, we will be moving on to our one of our inspiring stories of our Brave Heart volunteer. This PDX champ is Sudha. So Sudha has been picking up and delivering food for the frontline heroes at hospitals in and around Portland. And she's doing this as a part of an organization called Thanks to Healthcare Workers. She has been volunteering in Portland and has been volunteering since April of 2020. A little bit about Sudha is that she likes to bake, garden, and be creative. Thank you for joining us, Sudha. The stage is yours.
Hi, hi. I'm Sudha, and I live in I live in Beaverton. And when this whole pandemic started, um, I was just sitting at home, like all of us, scared for our lives and for our health. Everybody's health around us. And my first thing was my what?
A little bit difficult to hear. Maybe keep the mic, or if there's another way to, yeah.
Oh, is it better now?
It's a lot better.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Uh, so this whole thing started right after the pandemic started and lockdown started. Um, Me and my family, we were wondering how these frontline workers, the doctors and the other healthcare workers, and not just the doctors, but also the nurses, the people who work at the hospital, um, are stepping up, and they are the only people who are supporting the whole of the community during these hard times. So I was just wondering of how to show appreciation first thing by not getting sick and crowding the hospital. That was very important. But when I was thinking about it, my friend Aishwarya, she sent me a WhatsApp message saying, "Do you want to send some pizza?"
Sorry to interrupt again. It maybe could you try speaking up a little bit louder?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Sorry again.
No, it's okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, so my friend Aishwarya, Aishwarya Dhananjay, she sent me a text message asking if I wanted to be part of, sponsoring some meals for the local hospital, um, just to say thank you because they don't get to go out, they don't get breaks to go out and have lunch, just to just a way of appreciating what they're doing for the community, and that's how this whole thing started. And today, I'm very humbled and proud to say that we have delivered about 11,100, more than 11,100 meals to about 25 hospitals in and around northern Portland. We're 35 volunteers strong, and it's been amazing. The response of the community has been amazing. We have in the process supported 25 more than 25 local restaurants and bakeries. And the important thing is the generosity of the community that just came together out of nowhere. And it's amazing to see that people have started celebrating their birthdays and anniversaries by contributing to this wonderful cause and just to show appreciation. It's very important that, yes, we stay safe and we don't become um, part of the burden that is there for that's already there, that's already being faced by the hospitals and the healthcare community. But it's also great to show appreciation for what they're doing. And having said all of this, it's very important that I want to say that uh, you have, if you do want to volunteer, you have to stay safe, you have to wear a mask. I have delivered about 45 times, and every time I've tried to stay safe as much as possible with no contact, and it's been very smooth. Aishwarya has done a fantastic job creating this web of volunteers and donors and the community people who have kept the donations coming in so we can do more and more sponsoring of the meals um, for the hospitals. Yeah, so it gives me a lot of peace knowing that I'm able to somehow support the community. Um, yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Sada, for sharing with us your volunteer experiences. It is so truly inspiring to see how much of an effort that it has increased to. And we truly appreciate that you are out there serving the community while, it's still advised not safe to go out. So really appreciate that. We will be now moving on to a musical medley by Preeti and Sanji. Musicians Preeti and Dr. Sanji. Dr. Sanje is a researcher at Intel and has his PhD in CS, and he's the founder of Abagama. He's passionate about arts and music, and his motto is sing your heart out and express through art. Preeti G enjoys singing and believes that it is a great form of expression and healing, that it brings joy to everyone. She believes that if you have the opportunity and the ability to make a difference in someone's life, don't wait, go for it. So a little bit about the duo is that they started Abagama Desi Nights and Desi Art Night during this pandemic to spread cheer. They are part of the Sangeeta Sanje core group since 2018, and they have been uplifting the community spirits and bringing people together through the music and arts. Preeti Ji and Naseem Ji, please take it away.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I would like to say that Abagama Desi Mic Nights, would like to share something about it. It's an open mic night for all the Desis, and it's the first of its kind. It's your platform to sing. Our message to everyone is that it is your passion, your talent that makes the show. So keep the spirit going always. And if there was a very important time for this, it is now. And remember, why sing alone when you can sing with everyone? And why sing in the bathroom when you can sing on Abagama Desi Mic Nights? Okay, with that, let's begin our program. जाना नहीं तू कहीं हार के, कांटों पे चल के मिलेंगे साए बाहर के। ओ राही ओ राही, ओ राही ओ राही, ओ राही ओ राही, ओ राही ओ राही। सूरज दिख रुक गया है, तेरे आगे झुक गया है। सूरज दिख रुक गया है, तेरे आगे झुक गया है। जब कभी ऐसे कोई मस्ताना निकले है अपनी धुन में दीवाना, शाम सुहानी बन जाते हैं दिन इंतजार के। ओ राही ओ राही, ओ राही ओ राही, रुक जाना नहीं तू कहीं हार के, कांटों पे चल के मिलेंगे साए बाहर के। ओ राही ओ राही, ओ राही ओ राही, ओ राही ओ राही, ओ राही ओ राही।
Our next song is a very popular Kannada song sung by Dr. Rajkumar. And the meaning of the song is, he says, take life with positivity, keep smiling, walk it with pride. Let the light of every new day rise within your heart, for the sunlight of a smile is the best way to brighten any morning. ನಗು ನಗುತ್ತಾ ನಲಿ ನಲಿ ಏನೇ ಆಗಲಿ,
की मुस्कुराहटों पे हो निसार, किसी का दर्द मिल सके तो ले उधार, किसी के वास्ते हो तेरे दिल में प्यार, जीना इसी का नाम है।
किसी की मुस्कुराहटों पे हो निसार, किसी का दर्द मिल सके तो ले उधार, किसी के वास्ते हो तेरे दिल में प्यार, जीना इसी का नाम है। If you think positively, sound becomes music, movement becomes dance, smile becomes laughter, mind becomes meditation, and life becomes a celebration.
माना अपनी जेब से फकीर है, फिर भी यारो दिल के हम अमीर हैं।
माना अपनी जेब से फकीर है, फिर भी यारो दिल के हम अमीर हैं।
मिटे जो प्यार के लिए वो जिंदगी, चले बाहर के लिए वो जिंदगी,
किसी को हो ना हो हमें तो एतबार, जीना इसी का नाम है। रिश्ता दिल से दिल के एतबार का, जिंदा है हमी से नाम प्यार का।
रिश्ता दिल से दिल के एतबार का, जिंदा है हमी से नाम प्यार का,
कि मर के भी किसी को याद आएंगे, किसी के आंसुओं में मुस्कुराएंगे,
कहेगा फूल हर कली से बार बार, जीना इसी का नाम है। किसी की मुस्कुराहटों पे हो निसार, किसी का दर्द मिल सके तो ले उधार, किसी के वास्ते हो तेरे दिल में प्यार, जीना इसी का नाम है।
Keep smiling, stay positive, spread cheer, spread love. Thank you.
Thank you, Asim ji and Preeti ji, for a wonderful performance. I personally cannot understand Hindi. I can speak and understand Kannada, but even the Hindi songs brought me such joy. And it's just understandable how much the power of music can do, to be engaged in when we can't go outside and engage in all the other activities that we used to be able to. So thank you so much for that wonderful performance. Next, we will be welcoming the leader of our Sangeeta Sanje to talk a little bit about Sangeeta Sanje and where it's come from when it started to where it is now. So I welcome Ramesh ji.
Thank you, Nehal. Namaste to everybody. Hope you are enjoying this program. This is the first time we are trying to do something like a webinar, that too in English. Please apologize us if there is any mistake or faults. Thank you so much. Little bit about Sangeeta Sanje. Sangeeta Sanje was a brand started in June 2018 by few like-minded friends along with me. Basically to promote local talent in the fields of music, singing, and dancing. primary focus was on Kannada language, but not just limited to. Our objectives to promote Kannada language events, identifying upcoming talents, budding artists, nurture and groom them, provide an opportunity or a platform for all the performing enthusiasts. By preserving the richness of our heritage and culture through community events. We work with many nonprofits in doing fundraisers and community events that aligns with a good social cause. Our journey so far, we started in 2018 with just one event. We had done that in Intel, one of the auditoriums which had a seating capacity of about 100 people. And there were about 10 participants, along with our singer from India, Mr. Kumaran. And we had about 10 volunteers supporting us. In 2019, we moved into a bigger space. We had about 300 people attending our event, and it was a fundraiser for Abhyudaya, a non-profit from Bengaluru. We had about 35 participants overall, with many kids participating for the first time in Sangeeta Sanje events. And we had about 25 volunteers. Year 2020 has done so much things to this world. Everybody is aware, and we are all talking about it today. In spite of this, we were able to do 4 events, and this is our 4th one that we are going live right now. So our previous programs had 1,500 views within less than 12 to 14 hours of the program live. We have more than 65 people participating and 30 plus volunteers. Some of the few initiatives that we have done of late are, as I earlier mentioned, a unique platform for budding talented artists. For 2019 Abhyudaya event, we raised about $7,362 through music concert. And through our kids event in this year and Gana Sangama adults event, we raised about $645, and we plan to donate this to essential workers. Thank you for all your generous contributions. We also started an educational series, and we had our first educational class summer camp called Vedic Mathematics. We had about 45 kids participating, and as part of the suggested donations, everything contribution came from local Portlanders, about $631. So in total, in last 1 year, we have raised close to $10,000 for the benefit of the community. We encourage kids to work with us and be part of our programs. A lot of kids gets volunteering opportunity, and they help us. 80 to 90% of the work of this webinar are done by kids from middle school and pre-med. We also started a small initiative. Everybody does this. Everybody in the friends circle does this. We just give a name called Family Support 360. We have about 25 volunteers from all our Bethany neighborhood and nearby locations. We support each of the family's emergencies and unprecedented times of human life cycle. We also support people who are going through this pandemic situations. We have helped a few families there. Some of the families wanted to go back to India, so using Vande Bharat mission, we have helped them to go back to India, either by providing tickets or working with them with the consulate. Immigration is a big issue. There are about 60,000 H4 kids who are impacted. As they turn 21, they will lose their immigration status. So this is a very critical issue for kids. Since it touches kids, we are working with about 52 people in Portland who are potentially impacted by this. We are trying to work with the government and try to pass the bill S386 as soon as possible. As I already mentioned, we are also starting the educational series. More to come in the upcoming days. The road ahead, opportunities are vast. Many people are working towards so many social causes. We will join hands with them, raise funds, work with nonprofit, do more of music and dance workshops, concerts, and more webinars like these. Thank you so much for your support and encouragement and everything that you have been doing to Sangeeta, Sanjay, and our team. Thank you. As Nehal already mentioned in the beginning of the slide, we have 3 opportunities for you to contribute. If you want to help any local COVID things in Portland, please generously donate through Seva. Don't forget to mention the chapter name Portland, Oregon, and comments PDX stamp. All Nike and Intel employees can donate via Benevity as well for corporate matching. If somebody wants to celebrate their birthdays or anniversary and wants to support free food for the healthcare workers, please contact Aishwarya Dhananjay. She's driving this initiative from Portland. If you feel you want to do something to Bangalore in India, back home, where we are all came from, please click on this link. There are a lot of activities done by Abhyudaya for people there for COVID. This is something called livelihood support. A lot of adults and people like you and me have been impacted by COVID. They have lost their jobs, and because of which their livelihood is at stake. So any funds that you donate or contribute here will go and support such people. And I would like to thank our sponsors, Mr. Anantan Ayaswamy and Uma Ramesh and family, and Santosh. Thank you so much for your continuous support and help. Thank you, everybody.
Dhanyawad Rameshji. It's really inspiring to see the wide range of activities that Sangeeta Sanjay is doing apart from music and dance. Now, to continue our program, we will go back to our wonderful doctors and have them share more about their experiences combating the virus in the front lines, focusing more on the diagnosis, treatment, and vaccine. Over to you, doctors.
Hello, I am Kishan Ramachandran. Moving on to diagnosis and treatment and what we are doing. So to diagnose COVID, what we do is something called nasopharyngeal swab. As you can see in this picture, that it's like a Q-tip, but it has to go all the way to the back of the throat through your nose. It's an uncomfortable thing, but shouldn't be a painful thing. They usually take about a second or less than 10 seconds to do the test. Initially, when the COVID pandemic started, testing was quite slow, and it used to take 4 to 5 days for the test results to come back. Now we get test results in a couple of hours. There are new tests coming out where they're getting test results in 5 minutes, which is very helpful. And there are also newer tests coming out where they can test saliva instead of poking your nose. That will be much more comfortable from the testing standpoint, where patients will feel more comfortable. And the tests are also coming back in 5 minutes, some of these tests, which are not widely available yet. Depending on how the disease progresses, I think it will be available more. And these tests have a sensitivity of 75 to 80%, meaning, let's say we take 100 people who have COVID, only 75% will test positive. So someone could have all the symptoms of COVID And because of the test sensitivity is slightly low, even positive people who truly have COVID will turn out to be negative. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what we are looking at is a CAT scan. It's a computer-assisted tomography. It's like an X-ray, but about 250 times powerful than X-ray. On your left side of the screen, what you're looking at is a normal lung. The black things in the lung, what you're seeing is normal, and that's where you breathe in air, and air gets oxygen goes into the blood, and carbon dioxide comes out. Now, on the right side, what you're seeing is a patient with COVID who came to ICU. It all the white spots what you're seeing in the X-ray or this CAT scan, that's the disease part. So it could be a pretty bad disease. As you can see, more than 50% of the lung is destroyed by this. So this we see only in patients who come to ICU. By the time lungs are this much damaged, they're probably on oxygen or even on a ventilator. But this is not normal presentation. Of all the COVID patients, about 10% get hospitalized, even 10 to 20%, and as they're detecting more and more asymptomatic cases, it's probably less than 10% of patients who are getting hospitalized. Even among the hospitalized patients, around 5% of them land in ICU. So this is not something you see in every COVID patient. This is a kind of an exception where, or extreme case, we could say. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, coming to treatment. I mean, when it comes to COVID, the best thing is not get infected. Let's say bad luck, you got infected somehow. The best treatment is having a good immunity. And like you heard earlier on, the ways to improve your immunity, that's good. And the other thing I would suggest is if you're overweight or obese, if you could lose weight, that would help you a lot. But once you are diagnosed with COVID, if you have no symptoms, there is really no treatment needed either. In symptomatic patients, again, we have mild cases. It's a huge spectrum from mild cases to moderate to severe cases where they land in ICU. Mild cases meaning I have seen few patients having just fever and they think it's flu and it goes away, and it's pretty common. Mild cases, I would say, are the majority of the cases. You just treat the symptoms, treat fever, muscle ache, take some rest, and that should help the most. Now, it's only in patients who have moderate to severe cases requiring hospital is what we see in the hospital most of the time, obviously. Once the treatment is, once they land in hospital, they're usually, if they're getting admitted to hospital, their oxygen levels are low, and we start them on oxygen initially through the nose, then we move on to masks, and in extreme cases, we move on to the ventilators. The other thing what we found, which is very helpful in improving the oxygenation in the body, is proning them. What I mean by proning, as you can see in this picture, when you sleep on your back, that's called supine. But when you lie down on your stomach, that's called proning. That has shown to increase the oxygenation tremendously, and that has been shown to be very helpful. And this we have been doing since March. It's not just COVID that we do proning. We were doing proning even for other diseases for a long time now. It's just that we have been doing this more in COVID patients. Next slide. Other treatments, what we have been using and what has been shown to have some effect in severe patients, meaning those requiring oxygen or steroids. They conducted a study with dexamethasone, which showed that the number of people who survive better with steroids. Should be any kind of steroid, not just dexamethasone, but dexamethasone was studied. The next one is plasma, which we have been using. Say a patient is recovered from COVID. Red Cross up here in Portland tests the amount of antibody in their plasma, and that plasma is collected and given to the patient in ICU. It's about 200 ml of plasma, which is not much. It's about your 1 cup of plasma is what we give to the patient for them to get better. Personally, I have not seen much improvement from this. This is called convalescent plasma, and there are no studies showing good results. But this is something which have been tried for many other diseases, and being desperate to try anything for COVID patients to get them better, we have been using it. The other drug is called remdesivir. It has been shown to shorten the hospital stay. Again, it does not change the mortality. The other thing is blood thinners. For multitude of reasons, all these COVID patients have blood clots. The way we see it is they could present with stroke when there is a blood clot in the brain. They could present with a pulmonary embolism when there is a blood clot in the lung, or they could present with even heart attacks. Whenever you see higher mortality, they attribute it mainly to these blood clots. So almost all the patients who come to ICU get these blood thinners. Next is supplements like vitamin C, zinc, melatonin, vitamin B. There are a lot of supplements which are shown to improve your immunity. They have never been studied in COVID as such. So since we think lack of good immunity is one of the reasons that patients get very sick in COVID, we are using vitamin C, zinc, and melatonin in all our patients admitted with COVID. Not sure how much it's helping. There are not much side effects of taking supplements in right amounts. So we are using it. Next slide. So this is something which has been publicized a lot, hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. Initially, when the COVID started, we were using hydroxychloroquine. And since March, there are multiple studies which have shown that hydroxychloroquine is not that helpful, nor is azithromycin or Actemra. Next slide. Okay, coming down to vaccines. Everyone is interested. When will a vaccine come out? How much effective a vaccine will be? Once the vaccine comes, does it mean the disease is cured or disease is completely under control? Frankly speaking, no one knows the right answer, although this slide gives us some idea of where we are with the vaccines. Now, you can see that vaccine testing has these phases. There's a preclinical stage, there is a phase 1, there is a phase 2, phase 3, and then the vaccine gets approved. Preclinical is when they test it on animals. And once it's safe in animals, then they test it in humans. That is phase 1. Phase 1, they would test on, say, about 40 to 50 patients, not too many. And if it's safe enough in those patients, meaning no one dies or no one has severe adverse effects, then they go to phase 2. Phase 2 is a few hundred people. They test on few hundred people and see what the effects are and how effective vaccine is. And then is phase 3. And in phase 3, they test on thousands of people. And they watch them for a while, how they do. Is the vaccine effective in the sense that once you get the vaccine and you're exposed to COVID, do you get infected or not? Does vaccine itself give you any kind of side effects? Are the side effects mild? Are the side effects serious? A lot of things. And if everything seems reasonable and the vaccine seems effective, then it gets approved. Although I have to explain here, this is from New York Times vaccine tracker. As of now, there are 9 vaccines in phase 3 trial, and these 2 approved or limited approval, 1 in China and 1 in Russia. And of the 9 vaccines in phase 3 trial, Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Pfizer, each one has one vaccine, which they are testing in phase 3 trials. Now, for COVID, FDA is saying that if the vaccine is 50% effective, meaning let's say they gave vaccine for 100 people and they expose all those 100 people to COVID and only 50 people get the disease and 50 are free, disease free, or they don't get the disease, then FDA is ready to approve such a vaccine. And because it's a pandemic, there are multiple countries working on this vaccine. As you can see in the preclinical stage, there is 135 different vaccines being tried. So when will we get a vaccine? We don't know, but there is a very high likelihood we may get a vaccine before the end of the year. But once we get a vaccine, will the COVID disappear completely? Actually, the answer is no. That's because, first of all, vaccine, FDA is saying 50% effective vaccine we will approve. Second thing is people don't take vaccines. They don't trust. Not everyone will take the vaccine. Just like not everyone is wearing a mask, not everyone will take a vaccine and virus will keep spreading. Example is flu. Flu vaccine sometimes, depending on the year, sometimes it's just 50% effective, sometimes even less. In spite of that, people get flu, people get affected. So even post-vaccine, you could look at something like flu where coronavirus will be around. You often hear of people getting infected. It won't be completely gone. It looks like we have to learn to live with it. Okay. Thanks for giving the opportunity to talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kishan. It was really fascinating, especially for me as a pre-med student, to hear about all that. Also to hear that the treatment and tests, most of the vaccine have come so far. It's really inspiring. It makes it seem like the entire scientific community is working together to combat this virus. So thank you for that. Now we're going to continue our yoga talk by going back to Anirudhji and having him tell us about the power of yoga, especially pranayama. So over to you, Anirudhji.
Hariom, and thank you again. So this part of my talk is going to focus on yet another aspect of improving the immune system. So in the previous one, we noticed how we could do something with the diet. What can we do reducing the food consumption? The next one is actually, remember the first person, the COVID warrior, had mentioned something like, you need to stay strong, otherwise it actually impacts the immune system. And I guess what she was saying by that is you don't want to be overcome by negative emotions anytime you're facing challenges or obstacles. And this is something which is a very common sense experience for all of us. Is anytime we experience fear, we experience any other kind of a negativity, it does sap our energy, and therefore it does affect our immune system. So what can we do in order to elevate or improve our well-being through yoga? And one of the very, very common and very well research techniques is pranayam. And pranayam literally means pranayam. Pran means the vital force, and ayam means to regulate or to control. So pranayam is nothing but controlling the vital force in the body, which is normally through the breath, the life force. And this is also something we all have, even if you throw yoga out, this is also something that has seeped into common sense, or very common usage by people for forever, for thousands of years. Remember, one of the first things that anybody tells you, doesn't matter if it's in India or in the US or anywhere else, is if you're feeling very anxious or if you're feeling very angry, the first thing any psychologist will also tell you is try and calm down and take a deep breath, right? This I'm not even sure if this also comes from yoga, although of course you can find the roots back in there. But this is something that everybody, in any part of the world, people have discovered by themselves as, yes, there is an impact. If you breathe slowly, it will help you purge the anxiety or reduce the anxiety or manage the anxiety, whatever it is that might be causing that anxiety. And therefore, pranayam is a set of breathing techniques that you could use. Now, of course, pranayam, like I said, just simply means regulating the breath. It doesn't tell you how do you regulate it. So let's look at a few very basic things. In order to basically, have a healthy life, most healthy adults breathe at the rate of 15 breaths per minute. That's your typical breathing rate for most of us, unless of course we are involved in some physical activity like running or any other sports, or the only other time that it is higher for most is when we are anxious, when a lot is going through us, we are stressed, we are anxious, we are angry. Then of course our heart rate tends to our heart rate as well as our breathing rate tends to go up. Now, the goal of pranayam from the perspective of yoga is to basically make your breathing more efficient. And the way you make it more efficient is you reduce your breathing rate from 15 breaths per minute to, as low as you can get while maintaining normal activity. So 15 breaths per minute is basically roughly 4-second breaths, which means 2-second inhale, 2-second exhale. And with pranayam, you can easily get it to about 10 to 12 breaths per minute in regular activity, which is basically extend the 4 seconds to about 5 to 6 seconds. So which means 2 to 3 seconds inhale, maybe a second hold, 2 to 3 seconds exhale. So that's basically our goal. And when you do that, you will notice that you're able to manage your emotions better. You're able to manage your overall mood a lot better. So there's a well-known saying, right? And it's actually has its root in yoga, is it's very difficult to control the mind, which is the root of all these thoughts, right? We have all these thoughts, especially when overcome with obstacles, or when you hear about Corona, for example, right? It creates a lot of anxiety, especially in March when this thing was coming up. I mean, there was a lot of anxiety because there was a lot of unknowns. And when you have a lot of unknowns, of course, there's fear as a result of that. And how do you deal with those things? So it's very difficult to control the thought, but then the way to control the thought is to control the breath. So since we are not able to directly control our emotions, when you're angry, if somebody says don't get angry, it doesn't help much, right? How do I not get angry? Because I don't want to be angry in the first place, but yet I'm feeling anger. So the best thing you can do is to control the breath, because the breath exerts a direct influence on the mind. You can see this if any of you are curious, you can run simple experiment. If you slow down your breathing, like take deep breaths, it'll be very difficult to attach to the thoughts. It's your thoughts become lighter the deeper you breathe. The more shallow you breathe, the more you'll attach yourself to those thoughts, and the faster that anxiety will grow, and more the thoughts that will come in your mind. So with that in mind, one of the simplest techniques I can tell you is something called Kapalbhati. Now Kapalbhati literally means, Kapal means forehead and Bhati means shine in Sanskrit. So Kapalbhati means one that brings a shine to the forehead. Now what exactly does that mean? It has its roots in, if you've seen any of the so-called noble people in probably any tradition, and specifically the Indian tradition, is they're shown with this halo around their face, around their head. And this halo basically means that their mind is very pure. And that's what is basically bringing the shine to the forehead. And the best way to do that is through cleansing of these thoughts in the mind through pranayama. So that is why Kapalbhati is a very popular one, because Kapalbhati is supposed to remove any big thoughts that you're holding in your mind. And it's a very, very simple technique. It's basically, you just do active exhalation. You do not attempt to inhale. Inhale will happen automatically. And you're just focusing on the exhale, both through the nostril, the inhale as well as the exhale. Now, inhale, which is involuntary, which will happen automatically, and the exhale has to be done with the nostril. Again, one of the goals of pranayam in most pranayam practices focus on the exhale. It goes with our standard, human thing is we are very good at receiving, but we are very bad at giving. Most of us, that's how it is. And that's why we have to make an effort for charity. We have to make an effort to do something. It's the same thing with our breath, is where we are very good at inhaling. I won't say very good, but we are relatively better at inhaling than we are at exhaling. Our exhales tend to usually be more shallow. And that's why in pranayam, generally, we are trying to work on making our exhales longer. So Kapalbhati is basically just focusing on the exhale. So if I have to demonstrate, it's a very simple technique. I sit still with an erect back, and then all I'm doing is trying to exhale periodically. Now, the only visible movement in your body will be that in your abdomen. So basically, if you place a palm in your abdomen and you're exhaling, so it's a very, very simple technique. Now, there are two, one word of precaution. If you have high blood pressure or if you have any heart issues, then I would be very careful doing this particular pranayam. For that, it'll be the next one, which I'll be talking right after this. So you have to be careful if you're having any heart issues or high blood pressure. Then you can still do it, but then you have to do it at a slower rate. So normally Kapalbhati, what I would recommend is you can start with one breath a second. So one exhale a second, and then slowly accelerate to up to 3 breaths a second, and then come back. And the way I usually, when I run my classes, what I do is I have this app called Metronome, which is a free app on both Android and iOS. And it's just a beats app. So you can set the rate at which you want the beats to happen. And then you just set it there, and then you can use that as your practice. So you can start with 60 beats or 1 beat per second, which is 60 beats per minute, and then use that to synchronize your exhales too. And normally, if you want to actually increase your lung capacity, you want to not use the same frequency. You want to basically go from 60 breaths per minute to all the way to 180, and then come back and basically vary the rhythm of your breath. And you will notice that if you do that within a matter of maybe 2 to 4 weeks, you will notice that your lung capacity is increased, that your exhales are deeper, and therefore your inhales are deeper as well. So this is a very, very good technique to get rid of any anxiety, anytime you have anger or anything, anything that is bothering you. Those thoughts, they will lose grip on your mind the moment you do this, even for 5 minutes. My recommended time is to practice this approximately 10 minutes a day every morning. Ideally, you want to practice Kapalbhati only empty stomach, or at least 2 hours after a major meal, because as you can see, this can be quite intense. You don't want to have your stomach full when you're doing Kapalbhati. So this is a wonderful technique to alleviate any anxiety, any stress, and manage it using just the breath. And you can do it sitting in your office chair, seeing anything. If you can sit in a lotus posture, any cross-legged posture, even better. But make sure your spine is erect, and that's all that is required, that you've not had food for at least 2 hours, and just simply follow your own internal rhythm, or maybe use an app like metronome. Now, the second thing, second pranayam that is very popular that I love is called Nadi Shodhan. Nadi means energy channel, and the 2 energy channels are Ida and Pingla, which is basically, Ida is your moon channel, which is the left one, and the Pingla is your male masculine channel, which is the right one. And it is well known again that we never breathe evenly through the 2 nostrils. At any given time, one of our nostrils is usually a little bit more active than the other. And what Nadi Shodhan aims to do is to balance the 2 nostrils. And what the yogic science says is, the moment you balance the 2 nostrils, then a third nadi, an invisible nadi along the spine, which is called Sushumna, gets activated. And that basically helps you calm down. It's a meditative force that basically helps you calm down. So Nadi Shodhan is basically a very, very good pranayam to basically to calm down, or if you're having difficulty, let's say falling asleep, you can do that. Unlike the Kapalbhati, you can basically do this anytime. You can even do it right after eating food, but I wouldn't recommend it. You don't want to do any pranayam right after eating food, but you could do it as early as like half an hour after a meal. And there's nothing, even if you have high blood pressure or heart issue, no issues, no problems. Any medical conditions, you should still be you should be able to do it. Now, here's the simple technique. So let me demonstrate it. You can have your palms anyway, but the ideal is this pranayam mudra with your middle finger and index finger folded inwards and the other 3 fingers folded out. You press your right nostril with the right thumb. You start inhaling with the left, let's say 5 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They use the other 2 fingers to close both the nostrils, and you hold it for 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you release the thumb. Now you will exhale from the opposite nostril 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you inhale from the same nostril, you exhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, exhale. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is one cycle. So the rule in this is to improve your lung capacity is to exhale twice the amount that you inhale and you hold. So you inhale 5, you hold 5, you exhale 10. And then you do that for the opposite nostril. So each cycle is 40 seconds. And I would recommend minimum of 5 cycles anytime you do it. So that's really not much at all. That's just 3.5 minutes. So this is a very good quick pranayam. You can start with 5, 5, 10, and as you improve your practice, it'll be 10, 10, 20, then 15, 15, 30, which you should, if anybody is doing this even 4 or 5 times a week, within 2 months, you can come to 15, 15, 30. And that is really effective. You will notice the moment you even do one cycle of a 15, 15, 30, which is basically 2 minutes, it will, give you that feeling of being relaxed and calm. And so if you're relaxed and calm, over time, I bet your emotional state will be better and your immune system will be significantly better. So I hope all of you will feel encouraged. There's really nothing required for this. Morning, you get up, you do this. Most people do some kind of practices on their own anyways without even realizing it. But if you can cultivate a very, very formal, regular practice of pranayam, it will help your emotional well-being and it will help your immune system. And of course, a host of other benefits. And these are things that have been well researched for thousands of years in the Indian system. And there's also a lot of science backing the benefits of breathing, of active breathing. So any questions, please feel free to ask, but I would encourage you to consider one of these practices, incorporating this in your daily life to improve your immune system. So Hari Om, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anirudhji. It's truly wonderful to hear about how amazing yoga is, and especially the remarkable ability of pranayama, and how simple it is to bring about such a big change, especially in uncertain and anxious times like these. So thank you so much. A quick note for the audience, please stay tuned for the Q&A session, which will come shortly after part 2. So stay tuned for our question and answers and also the interesting video at the end. But we'll continue for now with to hear more of the moving stories from our COVID survivors. So next we have Santosh. Santosh is a student at Oregon State University. He fought the virus for close to 2 weeks and faced symptoms of fever, coughing, lethargy, and even slight chest pains. Some of the most important preventative steps he took were drinking several immunoboosters and gargling salt water. A little bit about Santosh. He loves biking and spending time with his friends. He's passionate about his business-related projects, and he loves spending time with animals. Thank you so much for being here, Santosh. Over to you.
Thank you. The date was June 4th. At 4:04 p.m., I finally caught up to my mom, who was on a jog, to tell her the good news. The news, you see, that would quite literally change my life forever. You see, as a college freshman, I'd been actively searching for an internship. And moments prior, I'd received my acceptance. Was ecstatic to tell her about the opportunity that I'd been waiting on for months. But when I finally told her, her face filled with glee, yet at the same time, I could feel a hint of sorrow. She told me she was proud, but was concerned. Is it a good idea to take on a job during this pandemic? She asked me. And while her concern was genuine and completely reasonable, I couldn't even begin to accept the possibility of declining the opportunity that had been given. An opportunity that had only opened up with hours of dedicated work. I knew what she was saying was right, but to risk the experience of a lifetime, I couldn't accept it. So I assured her everything would be okay, that I would be safe around others, take extra precautions, and be vigilant at all times. She hesitated, but she finally gave in. A few weeks later, my internship with 3 other students began, who had all been selected as well. 6 feet apart, we sat discussing our job and role within the company. I was excited and continued to daydream about what the future with the company would hold. The hours would pass quickly, and fairly soon us 4 interns became comfortable with one another. In fact, we became so comfortable with each other that when it was just us in the room, we would take off our masks. The other interns took off their masks, I thought. I'll wear it when I'm not around the other interns, I thought. It's kind of hard to make phone calls and make sales when wearing a mask, I thought. But regardless of what I thought, I didn't realize that I had just let my guard down, because 2 days later, one of the interns texted me saying that he got a fever of 104. The office quickly sent all the interns home, and we patiently awaited his test result. A positive diagnosis. He had corona. I clearly remember him texting me, saying that he tested positive. My gut feelings were realized. I quickly got tested along with my family, and a week later, I got a negative result. A sigh of relief swept over my face, and I thought it was all over. But as a precaution, the office wanted us to be quarantined for 2 weeks. So the first day of quarantine passed. I was as jovial as ever. 1 week passed. I was getting bored, but nothing had really changed drastically. It was now July 2nd. I remember lying on the couch in my main living room, starting to feel really, really cold. I'm sure it's just a slight chill, I assumed. So a few hours later, I was in bed, unable to move, with a fever of 104.2. Little did I realize that my quarantine had just begun. For the next few days, I was isolated in my bedroom, with my parents bringing me all the essentials I needed. Aside from the Tylenol and ibuprofen I took to reduce the fever, I was also taking vitamin D and B complex pills to keep my immune system healthy, as per the doctor's suggestions. The next day, I took another COVID test and began consulting with doctors both online and in person. But as my fever began to increase, along with my headache, loss of appetite, cold, and fatigue, I became mostly incapacitated. The result came back 2 days later, with another negative. This time around, I thought, it couldn't possibly be COVID. 2 negative results? How could I possibly have failed the result twice if I had it? So my relief would be met with a fever of 105 that night. At that point, I was taking close to 2,600 milligrams of Advil per day. I had started to feel slight chest pains and couldn't keep taking deep breaths anymore. As per the advice of the online doctors, I took a chest x-ray at the hospital and did one last COVID test, just in case. The test would come back negative once more, but the x-rays indicated otherwise. The doctor was fairly concerned because the picture of my lungs indicated that I had some type of breathing complication. A blood test which I took also indicated I had viral pneumonia, a condition that was common between COVID patients, which was causing my breathing difficulties. I couldn't trust the tests anymore. Many of the doctors I spoke with told me I was exhibiting symptoms of COVID and shouldn't rely on the tests for my treatment. My parents were concerned, and we began to act fast. Yet, we weren't sure what to do. My parents were already doing what they could. With no other options left, my parents decided to try giving me kabasura powder, a drink that was being used in India to help boost the immune system and fight against the coronavirus. There's no harm, I thought, so I quickly began to drink it each day. Within a few days, I'd broken my fever. It was now July 13th. Over the course of the week, I slowly became better until finally I didn't feel sick anymore. It had taken close to 2 weeks for the fever to stop and another 2 weeks for me to completely recover. Looking back, I could have never thought that COVID would affect me so deeply. Without the help, thoughts, and prayers of my friends and family, I think the ending of my story would be fairly different. I think my example sets a precedent for how truly unexpected the virus is. I'm a healthy 19-year-old boy. I'm not in COVID's at-risk population. The only exposure I had to others outside my close friends and the few encounters with friends and family were with the interns I sat next to. I had interacted with less than 15 people since March. 15. Yet, as luck would have it, it would be one of those 15 that would end up passing the virus to me. Please don't take this for granted. I know how eager everyone is to take on every opportunity and get back to normal. But before you think of yourself, think about how much it will hurt if something else happens to others in the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Santosh, for sharing your story. I can't imagine what you must have gone through. And it's really inspiring to have you here tell us. Next, we will move to hear some experience of our Brave Heart volunteer. Logan C. is the Portland chapter coordinator for International. He's been volunteering since August 2017 in Portland. A little bit about Logan C. He enjoys studying Sanskrit scriptures and Vedanta, and also volunteering at the Society of Portland, HSS, and SEGA. He's also interested in hiking. So over to you, Logan.
Namaste, everyone. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the team Sangeeta Sanje and Ramesh ji for organizing this webinar to create awareness in this community and also inviting Seva volunteers. I would like to extend my gratitude to all the audience who are watching this webinar online, and it is an honor to be among you guys today and talking to you all. So, why should we, in such a pandemic, why should we volunteer? What would motivate us to volunteer in such a pandemic? So what inspires me is like a couple of words from Swami Vivekananda. So Swami Vivekananda, in a letter to Maharaja of Mysore in 1894, writes, "Life is short. The vanities of the world are transient, but they alone live who live for others. The rest are more dead than alive." These are the words of Swamiji, and from a very young age, these words had very impact on my life. So, these words have always inspired me, and we to quote more from what Swamiji has said, Swami Vivekananda, like he traveled all over the world and he has analyzed all the different countries. And finally, he has identified the ideals for each of the countries. And for India, he suggested the ideals were Tyaga and Seva. So that is renunciation and service. So renunciation and service are the twin ideals for an Indian community. So intensify here in these channels, and the rest would be taken care. These are the words of Swamiji. Aren't these words wonderful? Like being for an Indian society, like these are the ideals which we have heard from very young age, and this will inspire us. So here in Portland, like when like these opportunities were given to me by Seva International and HSS, Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangha. So these organizations work on the same principles as prescribed in our Sanatana Dharma. So, and also it is very in line with what Swamiji has said, Swami Vivekananda has said. So I started volunteering for these organizations. So now let's look at what has been like. It's not only me who has done all these activities, but it's a team of volunteers. So I am just a representative of those volunteers here today. So this is done by Team Seva, like and HSS together. So when the COVID started, like we from Seva we started four-pronged response to this pandemic. So one was called Neighborhood Seva. So under Neighborhood Seva, so we have this multiple activities. So one was the Seva Annapurna scheme. So where weekly we will serve 60 hot meals to the homeless shelters. So our volunteers would cook the food, and our volunteers will go door to door, collect the food from whoever has cooked, the volunteers who have cooked, and deliver to the food shelters. So like that, we have signed up every week with two homeless shelters in Portland metro area. So another activity we did was connect with the community, like a refugee community. So with ERCO's with ERCO's support, we were able to serve like the refugee communities from Bhutanese and East African refugee communities. So we served around 4,000 lbs of food, essential food, groceries, and fresh produce to 100 plus Bhutanese and African refugees, and also some local families here. And in this, one thing I wanted to mention is like once we got a request from ERCO coordinator, they said there are 10 COVID affected families. In those families, all 10 people, like all the family members are COVID affected. Can you deliver? They need groceries, they need groceries and other PPEs like sanitizer, sanitizing wipes and all. So can you deliver this? So then Team Seva took it as a challenge, and we went to those communities where these 10 people, 10 families were living in Southeast Portland, and we were able to we took all the precaution necessary, wearing a mask, wearing gloves and everything, and maintaining the distance. We were able to deliver food and essentials to those 10 families. And now I hear that those families are fine and they're doing good and they're out of COVID. So that is on our neighborhood seva. Another activity we did in neighborhood seva is we get food boxes from Washington. There is an organization called Farmers Frog. So they provide us huge quantity of apples, potatoes, and onions. So they deliver it to Portland. So we used to store them in a warehouse location, and then we used to distribute to different organizations like ERCO, WFWA, Beyond Block CDC, food pantries, Haki Community, Salvation Army, and Hillsborough School District schools. So like that, we got around 100,000 pounds of food, and we distributed to the necessary communities in Portland. So next thing we did is in terms of PPEs, personal protection equipment, right? So there, we initially started with stitching masks. Okay, we signed up volunteers. We have around 20 volunteers who stitch the masks, hand stitched masks. So we provide them the material. A Seva team will provide them the material. They will stitch it, and then we collect it, and we have provided 4,000 plus. Now it is 5,000 as of today. So around 5,000 plus masks have been stitched, hand stitched, and then we have delivered them to like Kaiser Permanente, Trinity Hospital in Hillsborough, Beaverton Police Department, and also like a lot of communities in Southeast Portland, all the Bhutanese refugees. So yesterday we did one event where we distributed masks to them along with the food. So that is the stitched mask we provided. Also, we have provided 1,000 plus N95 masks and KN95 masks to all the different hospitals and Tuliti Hospital and the other places. So these are the activity on the PPE side. So another thing we did was on the emotional and social support for the community. So in this area, we had yoga sessions conducted by our volunteers, senior meets to keep their spirits high during this pandemic, and teenage leadership, and helping the virtual family hangouts through Bhajan Sandhya, Geet Sandhya events every week, and kids activities like kids Sloka events, and also supporting international students. So to support international students, we have at a national level, we have a helpline set up. So here in Portland, we specifically helped one student in Corvallis who was affected in this pandemic situation. He had completed his course, but he didn't had a job. So he needed financial assistance initially. He needed groceries. So our team Seva was able to help him generate the local support needed, and we were able to help him settle down and maybe take care of his basic needs of accommodation, food for around 1.5 months. So then later he wanted to go back to India. So then we arranged his travel. We were able to collect enough financial support to give him, buy him a ticket back home, and also some money to the ticket. He was a little bit sick, so he had some trouble with his health. So to take care of his health, we also collected some money and handed it over. So these are all the activities which as a part of Seva, it has happened in Portland. And this is not it's not one person activity. Like there are hundreds of volunteers involved in each of these fields who are helping me. I'm just a representative of those in front of you. Dhanyavad.
Thank you so much, Lokesh. It's really exciting to see how organized team efforts can bring about such a big change for our community. So thank you so much. We're going to move on to our musical medley. So let us hear once again the power of music. So I welcome Sharadaji and Padmini. Sharadaji is a trained singer who sang in classical music in numerous concerts over the years here in Portland. She also has a blog, so you can listen to her music on her blog at sharada.vadula.com. Padmini is a rising senior at Sunset High School, classical Guru, Srimati Tulsi Vishwanath, and also Western classical piano. As a reader and a little bit about them, the mother-daughter duo enjoys singing, reading books, learning languages, and watching movies. So over to them to tell us how wonderful.
Hi, can you hear us? And yeah, you can see us too, because I can't see my video. Yes, now I can see. Hi everybody, this is Sarada, and along with my daughter Padmini. Today, COVID-19 has taught us many things. First, not to mess with nature. And number two, because of COVID-19, a lot of people lost jobs, a lot of people had a lot of setbacks in health and so many other things. So we wanted to give a message saying, don't let anything bring you down, pull you down, and always think positive. Together we can do it and we shall overcome. So the number three, we wanted to say, life only comes once, so live fully and keep smiling and spread happiness. So my daughter Padmini will start off with a song from the 1955 film Pocahontas, The Colors of the Wind. Basically, she's singing the song because she wants to say, we don't own the nature, we are just a part of it, and we all are connected in this circle of life. So, we have to learn to respect each other and respect the nature. It's one of the things that COVID-19 has taught us. So here we go.
You think you own whatever land you land on. The earth is just a dead thing you can claim. But I know every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name. They think the only people who are the people who look and think like you. But if you walk the footsteps of a stranger, you'll learn things you never knew, you never knew. Have you ever heard the wolf cry to the blue corn moon, or asked the grinning bobcat why he grinned? Can you sing with all the voices of the mountain? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Can you paint with all the colors of the trails of the forest? Come taste the sun-sweet berries of the earth. Come roll in all the riches all around you, and for once never wonder what they're worth. The rainstorm and the river are my brothers. The heron and the otter are my friends, and we are all connected to each other in a circle, in a hoop that never ends. How high does a sycamore grow? If you cut it down, then you'll never know. And you'll never hear the wolf cry to the blue corn moon, for whether we are white or copper skinned, we need to sing with all the voices of the mountain, need to paint with all the colors of the wind. You can own the earth and still all you'll own is earth until you can paint with all the colors of the wind. വിജനതയിൽ പാതിവഴി തീരുന്നു ചുരിമണലിൽ വീണുവെയിലാറുന്നു ആഴമറിയാ സാഗരങ്ങൾ നീന്തി നീന്തി തീരമനയാ കൂരിരുളിലേകയായൊരോളമാകയോ ചുവടുലേ തലരരു ഓടിമറയും കാലമെങ്ങോ ഓർത്തു നിൽക്കാ തങ്കുദൂരെങ്ങോ പോയതെങ്ങോ എനിക്ക് നാവിൻ വെൺപിറാക്കൾ എന്തേ മാന്യനെന്തേ മഞ്ചിരാതിൽ പൂത്ത നാളം പുലരികളെ ഇതുവഴിയേ ഇനിയുണരൂ വരൂ വരൂ വെൺവീഥിയനായി വിജനതയിൽ പാതി വഴി തീരുന്നു ചുരിമണലിൽ വീണുവെയിലാരുന്നു ஒவ்வொரு பூக்களுமே சொல்கிறதே வாழ்வென்றால் போராடும் போர்க்களமே ஒவ்வொரு விடியலுமே சொல்கிறதே இரவானால் பகலொன்று வந்திடுமே நம்பிக்கை என்பது வேண்டும் நம் வாழ்வில் லட்சியம் நிச்சயம் வெல்லும் ஒரு நாளில் மனமே ஓ மனமே நீ மாறிவிடு மலையோ அது பனியோ நீ மோதிவிடு உள்ளம் எங்கும் எப்போதும் உடைந்து போகக்கூடாது என்ன இந்த வாழ்க்கை என்ற எண்ணம் தோன்றக்கூடாது எந்த மனிதன் நெஞ்சுக்குள் காயம் இல்லை சொல்லுங்கள் காலப்போக்கை காலமெல்லாம் மறந்து போகும் மாயங்கள் ஒளிதாங்கும் கற்கள் தானே மண் மீது சிலையாகும் வலிதாங்கும் உள்ளம் தானே நிலையான சுகம் காணும் யாருக்கில்லை போராட்டம் கண்ணில் என்ன நீரோட்டம் ஒரு கனவு கண்டால் அது தினமும் என்றால் ஒரு நாளில் நிஜமாகும் மனமே ஓ மனமே நீ மாறிவிடு மலையோ அது பனியோ நீ மோதிவிடு మౌనంగానే ఎదగమని మొక్క నీకు చెబుతుంది ఎదిగిన కొద్దీ ఒదగమని అర్థమందులో ఉంది అపజయాలు కలిగిన చోటే గెలుపు పిలుపు వినిపిస్తుంది ఆకులన్నీ రాలిన చోటే కొత్త చిగురు కనిపిస్తుంది మొక్క నీకు చెబుతుంది ఎదిగిన కొద్దీ ఒదగమని అర్థమందులో ఉంది అపజయాలు కలిగిన చోటే గెలుపు పిలుపు వినిపిస్తుంది ఆకులన్నీ రాలిన చోటే కొత్త చిగురు కనిపిస్తుంది से
पर है सुहाना, यहाँ कल क्या हो किसने जाना, ला 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 ला, यहाँ कल क्या हो किसने जाना. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and Sanjay. You guys really showed how music has the power to motivate us in any and how it goes beyond just a language. Music is way beyond that. So thank you so much. We will now move forward to our Q&A session.
So now we will welcome back the doctors, Anirudh, as well as Santosh and Maheshwari, and the volunteers back for Q&A. And we will be asking questions in that same order. Is everyone here? Yeah, I'll ask the first question. Okay. So one question that we have is for the doctors is whether Portland to Bangalore or any kind of international travel, is that safe, and what kind of mask is better in these flights?
International travel is always high risk. You stay in the planes for a longer time. We would say surgical mask, but international travel right now is high risk. It also depends on how the airlines are maintaining a distance. And you stay in the same environment for a longer period. So N95 probably offers the best, but it's very hard to wear N95 mask for an extended period of time. We wear N95 masks probably about 3 to 4 hours at a time, and it's very tight fitting. It's very hard to breathe. Surgical masks are probably better. So I would say safe bet would be surgical masks.
Thank you. Now we have a question for Anirudh on yoga. So could you please talk a little bit, whenever viewers ask, please talk a little bit about complete fast, like every 14 days at Ekadashi?
Okay, yeah. Can you guys hear me? Because, hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah. So I was not sure. So yeah, that's a good question. I have also played with that, fasting complete like a 36-hour fast. So, normally when we fast for our, religious reasons, it's a full day fast. There are two kinds of fast that are common. One where you just have one meal in a day, which means you're fasting. In fact, there are three kinds of fast I've seen. One, which is, very common in India, which is basically you're allowed to have tea and fruits and maybe some things like sabudana or like some specific items that you're allowed to during the fast, and then one proper meal. That kind of fast is not very useful in my opinion, and based on research, because you're not really fasting. It's like cheat fasting. Like let's say I'm only allowed potatoes. I can eat plenty of potatoes to replenish myself. In a large part of the world, that may not even be considered fasting. So that kind of a fasting where you're eating limited, like not limited quantity, either slightly, less quantity and limited variety of food, but you're still having, multiple times in a day is not very useful. The second kind of fast is where you do a complete fast, like intermittent fasting. I've said a 23-hour fast, but then you have something, maybe like you're fasting all day, maybe having water, that's okay, but having one proper meal in the evening. Yes, that's definitely beneficial, but then compared to the intermittent fasting, it's a lot less beneficial, because intermittent fasting, what I described, I expect you to do at least 5 days a week, whatever routine that you've set, which means if nothing else, at least the weekdays, Monday to Friday, it's probably okay to have a slightly different routine over the weekends. So that, yes, is beneficial, but then instead of doing 5 days out of 7 days, you're doing something like that maybe once in 14 days. Beneficial, but a lot less beneficial. The third kind is where you do a rigorous fasting the whole day, which means essentially you have fasted from the previous night until skipping a day and the breakfast of the following day. That's a 36-hour fast where you're having nothing other than water, or sometimes even nirjal, which means without water. That can have benefits. That can actually purge the toxins from your system. I think there is enough research to show that those things are definitely beneficial, and especially when they're done periodically every 14 days. However, the reason I did not mention that upfront is because those fasts are a lot more difficult for people. I mean, when you are doing intermittent fasting, not reducing the amount of food, and you're doing it every day, 16 to 18 hours, it actually is not difficult at all. Once you get used to it, and which, like I said, is just a week or two, it actually feels like normal. However, this 14-day fast does take time getting used to it, because unless you're doing it, even if you do it just once every 14 days, it'll probably take several months before you get used to it. The other downside with the Ekadashi fast that I've seen is a lot of people reduce their activity significantly on that, which means it's not a sustaining fast, which means if you're, let's say, not getting into sports activities or anything that takes a lot of energy, you cannot sustain it, which means you have to modify your day. You have to modify a lot of things that you do on that day, as opposed to the intermittent fasting that I'm talking about, which is basically you maintain your regular activity, right? So yes, the 36-hour fast is definitely beneficial, but it's a lot more difficult. Not everybody is in a position to do it. But let's say if intermittent fasting is not easy for you for family reasons or something else, if you can do the once in 14 days, 36 hours fast, it'll give you at least half the benefits. So yeah, I would still support that. I'm pretty sure there is some research. I mean, again, proper research in published journals is difficult for this kind of stuff. But whatever evidence I'm seeing, as well as from experience, I'm definite that it is beneficial.
Thank you so much, Anirudh.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, we move on to a question for our patients, I think, or recovered patients. I think Santosh is there. Question for you is, how were your interactions with your physicians and your volunteer, and any impacts of that?
So in terms of interactions, I think it's important to realize that this is a very new virus, and not just for us as patients who are experiencing it, but also for doctors. And a lot of research is very experimental because there's not enough data. So to be patient with the physicians who may be trying experimental methods or trying techniques that haven't been really completely tested, because frankly, there isn't that time period for testing. So overall, my experience has been great. I think a recommendation I would have is to get the opinion of multiple perspectives, multiple physicians. A great tool that I used was MD Live. They had a lot of online doctors there that gave me different angles and approaches in congruence with the in-person doctors.
Thank you so much for your response. Now we have a question for our volunteers. First, what were your initial challenges when you started volunteering?
So is this question for me, Pragna?
Yes, you can answer that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So initially when we started, so the getting volunteers out was the biggest challenge, because everyone was afraid to come out to do the like any seva activities, especially for neighborhood seva. Like for mask making and Annapurna, it was very easy to get volunteers. Like they will cook in their home, and mask making they stitch in their home, and then our volunteers go collect them. So 1 or 2 volunteers are ready to do that. But for neighborhood seva activities, like going into Southeast Portland, going into different locations to get people out, it was a challenge initially. But later, people looked at others volunteering, so they get motivated by looking at others. So that's how slowly it built up. The people started coming, and then there was a huge enthusiasm to serve. So that's one of the initial challenges we had. Another challenge we had was we used to get huge loads of food from Washington, as I said. So it used to come in a semi truck. So to unload that kind of a stuff, we need a warehouse. So the finding that warehouse was initially a challenge. but somehow it is still a challenge. So we had one warehouse, but that is we don't have it anymore. So yeah, that is another challenge we had. And then like for to run this grocery donation events to any community, right, we need funds. So though we run at a zero overhead cost, we don't, like, whatever money we collect, it's 100% it is for the seva activities. So there is no overhead for us if for seva activities. So but similar for the mask making. So all that thing needs funds, right? So the fundraising is another challenge which we are having. Yeah, but we are able to address them to some extent, and we are able to continue our activities. The community has supported us till now, like it is supporting, continuing to support. So we are able to overcome those challenges as for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lokesh. Sachi, you can also answer this in a second, and we'd like to hear from you as well. What were your initial challenges when you started off?
I wouldn't, to be honest, I didn't have any challenges, except that I think all the challenges were faced by Aishwarya. That is, she was the one who was coordinating it. I had a very easy job of just picking up the food and dropping it off where where I'm told to. That was I think the easiest part. Um, it was coordinating all of that. If I really must mention some challenges, that would be, sometimes it was too late. The food would come out a little late, and we had to talk to the hospital personnel who were waiting for the food. Those are just basic logistic challenges. But otherwise, I think we've had a fantastic community support us, and how the the main challenge would have been faced by Aishwarya coordinating all of this. That was the most important thing. But otherwise, I think we've had a fantastic community, and I hope we still have a lot more people wanting to contribute towards the cause, um, and yeah, and their service hours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Silaji. We also actually have Aishwarya Ji on the call. So Aishwarya Ji, if you would like to share any challenges you faced, we'd love to hear.
Hi, I couldn't hear you. Can you repeat the question?
What were your initial challenges, Aishwarya Ji, as you started this project?
So initially when we began this, the main challenge was talking to the various hospitals and coming up with a plan how this is going to work. So every hospital has a centralized coordination system, and they have like various local hospital where they have a coordination system. So this communication from top to their local hospitals and our communication with them, that was the biggest challenge. Because sometimes the centralized system will say, okay, send it to X hospital of Kaiser or X hospital of Legacy. Again, there'll be a sudden change, and we would have informed the local hospital that we are coming, but the centralized system would have told us, okay, go to another hospital, and they wouldn't have informed them. So then we have to call everywhere. Like till the food is delivered every single day, I have to sit for with my phone on, because there might be some last minute confusion that we have to deal with. So that is the biggest challenge, coordinating with the hospital system, because their internal system is very complex. And this is also very new to them, because they are having the COVID issue, they're having a lot of patient coming in, their emergency, their ICU, they are all critical, they are full. And at that time, we have to go and coordinate all this. This was a big challenge for us. Coordinating with the hospital system, how they are working, and this new thing that we are doing with them. So otherwise, we have had a smooth run. We have had great donors who have supported us. The restaurants have been very, very nice. Even a last minute increase in the number of boxes or change in delivery time, they were very cooperative. All the volunteers who delivered food. In fact, Sudha was telling that she was doing the easiest job. I would say that delivery is the backbone, because people who are delivering, they are doing the real job. All the rest of us, we are doing the work over a phone. So delivery is the backbone. All these volunteers, all our donors, they've been nothing but wonderful. And the only challenge we have faced is working with the hospital system in general. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Assuredly, Sarah. It's really inspiring to see all of you guys combating your challenges and solving some wonderful things. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Okay. This is a question for any of the doctors. A question from our viewer is it safe to eat takeout food from restaurants? What precautions should we take? Along with, is it safe to stay in hotels and Airbnbs?
Yes, takeout food should be low risk. It is pretty safe. You need to use basic precautions though when you go to get the food. Basic hand washing and mask. But otherwise, takeout is pretty safe. Now, other things, it's hard to comment. But yes, eating in restaurant is high risk, especially if it is inside a building. The other question was Airbnb. Airbnb, it's a little bit tricky. You don't know who stayed there and how much it was cleaned. So you may have to sanitize it a little bit before you use it, if you have to use it. I guess, you take some sanitizers with you, and sanitize the most commonly used surfaces. But like I said before, the contaminated surfaces are not the main mode of transmission of this virus. It's mostly through person to person. But I would still take all the precautions if you have to use Airbnb.
Thank you so much. We have another question for you, actually. What are the immediate steps we should take to care for someone if someone in our family is infected?
Well, that depends on how sick the person is. Let's say they don't have any symptoms, then just isolate them. Some supplements should be helpful. Vitamin C, zinc, melatonin at night. You need to check their oxygen. That's something that you can do at home. Like there's a small something called a pulse oximeter. It's not very expensive, but it gives us a good idea of how their oxygen saturation is in the blood. If they become symptomatic, they may need more investigation, like a chest X-ray or further investigation, and even sometimes hospitalization. So if you're asymptomatic, it should be straightforward. Isolate yourself, take some supplements, check your oxygen, and otherwise symptomatic, like supportive care, what we call, like if you have pains, take some Tylenol. Main symptom that I would worry about is cough and shortness of breath. That's when things start going down. You need to be careful there.
Thank you so much. So our next,
a question for our volunteer is, or any of you, is who really stepped up in helping?
Okay, I can take this question first. So, if for any of these kind of volunteer organizations, our Bharatiya community in Portland was the greatest support, if I had to say, right? So the people have participated in this Seva Annapurna, as I said earlier, or this mask making. A huge number of support. Like when we asked for volunteers, they came. And another for the neighborhood seva, again, to be like each time we call for volunteers, like there is a 40,000 lbs of food which has to be unloaded or loaded to the trucks. So the people, 20 people that have turned up, and we have like following all the social distancing measures, we were able to achieve those activities. So the people were the main supporters, Bharat Indian community. Apart from that, there are a couple of important persons I want to mention here. So one is Swami Chandrasekharananji from Vedanta Society of Portland. So he is the one who initially provided us the contact of ERCO with whom we are working for last couple of months. And also he provided us vehicles couple of times for transport of our relief material. So then another important person is Tini Srinivasan of Tinitron, is famously called Tini Mama. So he provided us with a warehouse where it was very easy to unload the trucks. With he in that warehouse he had a forklift, pallet mover, and everything. So it is very, he provided that facility for us. We have used it, and it was very helpful. And his daughter Nitasha, she helped coordinate a lot of. She worked with other organizations. She outreached and she was able to underprivileged communities, and she also arranged for the transport of those boxes to those communities. So that is another mention I want to make. And Rajgopal Mama, we can't do this kind of large activities without help of Rajgopal Mama. He is the one who connected different people. He helped us establish the connections in the community. So that is one mention I want to make. And another person who helped us is providing his truck, which is PDX A1 truck. So Venkat Muthu, he provided us with the truck free of cost. Wherever we want to use his vehicle for the Seva activities, he has helped us. So then there is one person in the Northeast Portland, Dr. Michelle. She is a big supporter of Seva. We somehow got connected with her. She is providing us with dairy boxes, food items. So she has helped us a lot. Then there is Casey of Scotch Dairy Farm, who helped us provide the cold storage for our dairy. So sometimes we get dairy from Dr. Michelle and we need to store it. So Casey has provided us the storage facility for the dairy products. And Srinivas ji of Apna Bazaar, he helped us procure the grocery items at a lower price for a couple of times. Also, Bhaskar Bandiji of Mother India Wholesale Food, he provided us one time a storage facility for the cold storage facility for one of our Seva activity. And as I said earlier, without volunteers, we can't achieve this kind of huge activities. So to load thousands of LBs of food boxes and to unload them and to deliver to different locations, so volunteers are the great champions, I would say. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, so in our group, even though Aishwarya Dhananjay was the one who spearheaded this, I think our donors, our volunteers, especially the women volunteers who had really stepped up, they are the strength and backbone of this whole process. And to mention a few, we have Priya Menon, Mekala Mohan, Padma Shri Gargesa, and Jyoti Veeramani. They were the main coordinators. And not to mention all the donors that we've had. We have had some amazing, amazing donors who have taken every opportunity to step up and donate for the cause and help us through this. So yeah, I think it's our community and the volunteer group that has been an amazing, amazing strength. And also, I want to mention the restaurants that provided us food, like Aishwarya mentioned before. They have been nothing but amazing, and they have made sure that the food was ready, nice and good. And so I wanted to mention them too. Thank you.
Thank you, Siddhaji. We have our last question for today to the doctors once again. What was your first reaction with the prospect that you would be on the forefront of this pandemic treating COVID patients? When you first found out, what was your reaction?
It was mixed. It's not the first contagious disease we were treating. There were other contagious diseases we were treating. What we were more concerned about was lack of availability of proper PPE. That was our biggest concern, more than the disease. Even now, initially in March, there's real shortage of PPE. No one was really prepared. That was our biggest concern, and that was it's uncomfortable. You're going to a COVID patient not properly protected. We still see COVID patients, but we are the availability of PPE is much better. And also the other concern initially was the uncertainty. No one really knew exactly how it got transmitted, exactly how bad the mortality was. Now we know the mortality is not as high as what we thought initially, and now it feels much better. The anxiety is much less too. All right.
Thank you so much for your answer. That concludes our Q&A for tonight. Some of the other questions can definitely be answered offline. From here on, we will be moving to our next slide, in which we will talk about our upcoming events. So similarly to this program, we will be having another webinar, PDX Champ 2. Stay tuned for that date. That has not been decided yet. We will also be having another musical event, Gana Sangama 2. That's also, look up for that date. And there's also an educational series coming up. Title is Upcoming Weekly Classes. Look out for that as well. Some other community events to look out for include Abagama Desi Nights, which are weekly on Thursday evenings. There are also Abagama Desi Art Nights, which is September 17th, and you can get ready to learn various art forms in one show. So look out for these events.
Next, we will have our vote of thanks by Aishwarya Dhananjayji. Aishwaryaji has a role of coordinating over 35 volunteers to provide meals for frontline healthcare workers all over Northern Oregon. Through her organization, Thanks to Healthcare Workers Community Volunteer Group. She's been volunteering since March 2020. A little bit about her. She's a biomedical engineer and data scientist. She's also a Bharatanatyam dancer, a proud mom of 2 girls, and she enjoys gardening and cooking. Over to you, Aishwarya.
Thank you so much. At the end of life, we will not be judged by how many diplomas we have received, how much money we have made, how many great things we have done. We will be judged by, I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was naked, you clothed me. I was homeless and you took me in and said. These were the words of Mother Teresa. Service to mankind is service to God. Today, the greater Portland community is so fortunate to have so many brave hearts who have fought for the humanity during this COVID-19 pandemic. A big thanks to Dr. Kavan and Dr. Kishan, who risk their lives every single day to fight for their patients. This is supreme sacrifice. Maheshwari and Santosh, you have shown us how despite being in a difficult situation, you were able to overcome this with your will and determination. God bless you both. Sudha and Lokesh have set an example of how to selflessly devote to a cause. Anirudh, through his yoga, Asim, Preeti, Padmini, and Sharada, through their music, have spread positivity. Pragnya and Nehal, you were wonderful and made this evening so lively. Good luck to these aspiring physicians. Thanks so much to all the volunteers who have been the backbone behind this whole show, helping with promo videos, transition videos, and all the Sangeeta Sanje singers who contributed to the beautiful songs. Our heartfelt gratitude to Ananthan Ayasamy, PDX Prime Realtors, for his generous sponsorship. Our big thanks to Umasri Satyasekaran and Ramesh Krishnan, Premier Property Group, for their sponsorship. We are so fortunate that Portland-based associations like ICA, Portland Kannada Kuta, Greater Portland Telugu Association, Greater Portland Tamil Mandram, TCAP, TDF, Swaram, Gujarati Samaj, and the Hindi Sangam have immensely supported this. Finally, thank you to all the awesome audience who have made this such a big success. Stay safe, save life. Have a very nice good evening. God bless you all.
Thank you, Aishwarya ji. We would like to take a moment to appreciate all that you have done for the community. Aishwarya ji started her grassroots movement in March when the pandemic was just starting to take hold by messaging a few of her friends. What started as an idea just to deliver a pizza or two to healthcare workers grew exponentially, and now she coordinates a team of more than 35 volunteers and has received recognition from several Oregonian news sources. It is an honor to have you with us today, Aishwarya ji. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Sangeeta Sanjay team, for all the good work. Keep doing this good work. Thank you.
So now we are about to show you a very wonderful project. Sangeeta Sanjay singers have performed and sung in 12 different languages a famous poem by the Prime Minister of India, Aao Fir Se Diya Jalaye, or Let's Light the Lamp Again. This project has taken over 72 volunteers to be put together in 12 different languages. It shows how diverse India is and how all 12 states must come together and unite amongst the battle that COVID-19 has imposed upon us. COVID-19, we must also take pride in our diversity and must be able to unite to wipe COVID-19 off the face of the earth. So without that message, and please light a lamp in your own house. So next, we want to thank our wonderful sponsors. We want to thank Ananthan Ayaswamy. And we would also like to thank Ramesh ji, Umashri ji, and Santosh of the Premier Property Group. Thank you for your continuous support. We just want to remind you guys again of suggested places where you can donate. So again, you have the Seva link, the Abhyudaya link, and of course you can contact Aishwarya Dhananjaya again. We have enjoyed being your MCs for this event.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, stay home, and stay healthy. It was a pleasure being here tonight. Bye.